Recording date standard Galactic year 2547, day 127. Attention faculty. This is Professor Andax Brightscale speaking, as head of physical education at the Galactic Academy of Excellence. I feel compelled to document the extraordinary events that transpired during this academic cycle. What follows is my personal account of how a single transfer student turned our prestigious institution upside down, quite literally in some cases. I paused the recording device, my scaled fingers trembling slightly as I adjusted my teaching robes. The memories were still fresh, still almost unbelievable. The Galactic Academy of Excellence has stood as the premier educational institution in the Orion Arm for over 3 centuries. Our graduation ceremonies have launched the careers of 17 planetary presidents, 12 stellar admirals, and one particularly successful comedy troupe. Not that we like to talk about that last one. Those interpretive dances about quantum physics still haunt our reputation. As the head of physical education, I pride myself on maintaining the highest standards of physical excellence among our diverse student body. From the graceful floating Nebulonians to the telepathic Mindweaver species, we had developed comprehensive training programs for every known sentient race in the galaxy, or so we thought. It all started during our routine faculty meeting. Dean Luminox was droning on about budget allocations for the new anti-gravity chamber when Administrator Pax burst through the door, all 6 of her wings fluttering in obvious distress. "We have a situation," she announced, waving a holographic document wildly. "The exchange program committee has approved a transfer student from her antennae drooped dramatically, from Earth." The silence that followed was so complete you could have heard a whisperling sneeze. And trust me, whisperlings are renowned for their particularly quiet sneezes. A human Professor Quantix squeaked, his crystalline form clouding with anxiety. "But they are. Deathworlders," I finished, feeling my scales ripple with nervous energy. Class 12 planet inhabitants. The last time we had hosted a Class 8 species, they had accidentally cracked 3 reinforced walls during a simple game of zero-gravity tag. A Class 12? The insurance paperwork alone would be astronomical. Now Dean Luminox hummed, his bioluminescent spots pulsing in what he probably thought was a soothing pattern. "Let us approach this scientifically. What do we actually know about humans?" "They drink liquid dihydrogen monoxide for pleasure," one professor shouted. "They expose themselves to ultraviolet radiation deliberately," another added. "I heard they can break down proteins by secreting acid inside their bodies." The meeting devolved into chaos. Professor Quantix started stress crystallizing, Administrator Pax's wings tangled themselves into knots, and someone, I suspect it was Professor Yarrow from Botanical Studies, fainted dramatically into a patch of sympathetic carnivorous plants. As the head of physical education, I knew the responsibility would fall heavily on my department. How do you design safe exercise programs for a species that evolved on a planet with such horrifying gravity that they developed internal reinforced calcium structures? A species that could continue running after their body ran out of energy by breaking down their own tissues. A species that considered the consumption of capsaicin compounds a recreational activity. The committee spent the next 3 cycles preparing for our new arrival. We reinforced the gymnasium with grade 5 durasteel, typically reserved for starship hulls. We installed emergency gravity modulators every 10 feet. We even hired a specialist in Deathworld biology. Though she refused to stay on campus and insisted on conducting all consultations via hologram from a safe distance of 3 star systems away. But nothing, absolutely nothing, could have prepared us for what happened when Lily Blackwood actually arrived at our academy. End recording segment 1. I clicked off the device, my scales still tingling at the memory. The real story was just beginning, and someone needed to document it. For science, of course. And definitely not because the footage of what happened in the anti-gravity dodgeball tournament had become the most watched video in the Academy's history. Recording date standard Galactic year 2547, day 128. Resume log, Professor Andax Brightscale recording. The day of the humans' arrival brought more excitement than the time we discovered the cafeteria's quantum food replicator had gained sentience and started serving everything with motivational messages written in sauce. I stood at the Academy's main entrance alongside Dean Luminox, Administrator Pax, and a medical emergency response team that insisted on being present. The landing pad had been cleared of all students, though I noticed several dozen faces pressed against every available window, some using enhanced optical devices for a better view. The transport ship descended with remarkable precision, though our landing crew chief later complained about the pilot refusing to use our automated guidance system, claiming something about, quote, preferring to park manually, end quote. When the boarding ramp lowered, I instinctively coiled my tail into a defensive position. Administrator Pax's wings began their nervous flutter dance, and Dean Luminox's bioluminescence shifted to what I can only describe as anxious puce. And then she walked out. The human, Lily Blackwood, was shorter than we expected. Our research had prepared us for a towering monster of muscle and bone, but she appeared almost disappointingly normal at first glance. Almost. She moved with a peculiar smoothness that seemed to defy our artificial gravity settings. Each step was precisely controlled, yet somehow relaxed. Later analysis of the security footage revealed she was actually adjusting her gait to match our gravity levels, which were set to a comfortable 0.3 of her home planet's pull. Lily wore the standard Academy uniform, though the fabrication unit had clearly struggled with human proportions. The material bunched oddly around her, what do they call them, elbows? Such fascinating joints, allowing for both flexibility and devastating striking power. "Good morning, Professor," she called out, her voice carrying across the landing pad with startling clarity. Several of the medical team flinched. "I hope I am not late." The pilot insisted on taking a detour around an asteroid field instead of through it. Dean Luminox's spots shifted to a welcoming shade of mauve as he stepped forward. "Welcome to the Galactic Academy of Excellence, Student Blackwood. We trust your journey was comfortable." "Oh yes, very relaxing," she replied, stretching in a way that made several of her joints produce audible clicks. The medical team edged closer. "Though I am looking forward to getting some real exercise. 2 weeks in zero gravity gets pretty boring." I noticed she was carrying her own luggage, a fact that caused considerable murmuring among the observing students. The anti-grav trolley stood unused beside her. When asked about it later, she simply said she preferred to feel the weight. The maintenance staff later discovered the luggage exceeded our standard weight allowance by 300%. As we guided her toward the dormitory section, I observed the reactions of our student body. The Nebulonians drifted higher than their usual hover height, their gaseous forms condensing slightly in what I recognized as their species' anxiety response. The crystalline luminites refracted light in chaotic patterns, their equivalent of nervous chatter. But it was young Kip Brightflare, a Solarian known for his friendly disposition, who broke the tension. He quite literally glowed with excitement as he bounded up to Lily, his plasma core pulsing with enthusiasm. "Hi, welcome to GAY. I am Kip. Your thermal signature is fascinating. Are all humans so wonderfully warm?" To everyone's surprise, Lily laughed. Not the polite, measured response we had come to expect from new students, but a genuine sound of amusement that echoed through the corridor. "Thanks, you are pretty warm yourself. About 12,000 Kelvin, I am guessing." 12,273, Kip corrected, practically vibrating with joy at her observation. "Want to get lunch later? The quantum cafeteria is serving inspiration today. Yesterday my soup told me to reach for the stars, which, being a Solarian, I found rather redundant." Before I could intervene, fearing for the structural integrity of our dining facilities, Zendra Pulseweave, our top athlete from the Nebulonian cluster, drifted into the conversation. Her gaseous form crackled with barely contained competitive energy. "I hope you are ready for physical assessment tomorrow," she said, her voice carrying that particular harmonic frequency Nebulonians use when issuing a challenge. "We maintain very high standards here." Lily's response was merely to smile, a gesture that, according to our xenobiologist's hasty notes, could indicate either friendly acceptance or predatory anticipation. "Looking forward to it," she said, hoisting her impossibly heavy bags with casual ease. "I have always enjoyed a good workout." The way she said workout made me suddenly very grateful for those reinforced walls we had installed. I quickly ushered her toward her specially prepared quarters, trying not to think about tomorrow's physical assessment class. End recording segment 2. Personal note: requisition additional emergency repair drones for tomorrow. I have a feeling we are going to need them. Recording date: Standard Galactic Year 2547, Day 129. Resume log, Professor Andak's Brightscale recording. The morning of the standard fitness evaluation arrived with an atmosphere so tense you could have bounced a quantum particle off it, which, coincidentally, someone actually tried to do in the physics lab next door. I had arrived early to triple-check the safety protocols. Coach Thick Steelclaw, my assistant, was already there, his metallic exoskeleton gleaming under the gym's adaptive lighting system. "Are you certain about this, Professor?" he asked, mandibles clicking nervously. "The human's file suggests their endurance levels are concerning." The students began filing in at precisely 0800 hours. The Luminites arrived first, their crystalline forms arranged in perfect geometric patterns, a sure sign of pre-test anxiety. The Nebulonians drifted in next, with Zendra Pulseweave leading the group, her gaseous form swirling with competitive energy. Lily Blackwood walked in last. She wore our standard athletic uniform, though she had apparently modified it with something she called sports tape around her hands and wrists. The sight of her deliberately restricting her joint movement caused several Luminites to vibrate in distress. "Right," I announced, uncoiling to my full height. "Today's evaluation will test your abilities in 4 key areas: flexibility, strength, speed, and endurance. As always, you will be graded according to your species' baseline standards." The flexibility tests went smoothly enough. The Nebulonians, being essentially sentient gas, scored perfectly as usual. The Luminites demonstrated their impressive ability to refract around obstacles. Kip Brightflare, our enthusiastic Solarian, managed to compress his plasma core to half its usual diameter, a personal best that earned him a round of appreciative photon bursts from his classmates. Then came Lily's turn. She approached the flexibility assessment area, a series of energy barriers arranged in increasingly challenging patterns. What happened next caused Coach Steelclaw to drop his data pad. The human body, it turns out, is not supposed to bend that way. At least, that is what our xenobiologist screamed over the emergency comm channel. Lily contorted herself through gaps that even some Nebulonians found challenging, using what she later described as something called yoga. But it was the strength test that truly changed everything. Zendra Pulseweave went first, impressive as always. Her gaseous form compressed a Class 3 gravity ball to its minimum size through focused pressure manipulation. The viewing screens displayed her score 94th percentile for Nebulonian strength standards. The Luminites collaborated to create a crystalline lattice structure, their combined effort earning respectable scores in the 80th percentile range. Kip Brightflare nearly overloaded the sensors with his plasma-enhanced performance. When Lily stepped up to the testing station, I noticed several students activating their personal recording devices. The human grabbed the gravity ball, and for a moment, nothing happened. "Is it malfunctioning?" Coach Steelclaw whispered, checking his readings. "No," I replied, watching in fascination. "She is just getting a better grip." What followed was a display that caused our gravity sensors to send out 3 separate error messages before giving up entirely. Lily not only compressed the ball, she began casually tossing it from hand to hand as if it were a simple teaching prop. "Oh," she exclaimed, noticing our shocked expressions. "Should I stop?" The resistance felt a bit light, so I thought maybe I was doing it wrong. "Light," Coach Steelclaw sputtered. "That unit is calibrated for Class 5 planetary conditions." The speed trials were next, though by this point, several Luminites had excused themselves, claiming the need to realign their molecular structure. Their crystalline forms had become distinctly asymmetrical from stress. Zendra Pulseweave set an impressive pace in the acceleration chamber, her gaseous form streamlining to achieve near-sonic velocities. She emerged looking smug, if a cloud of semi-sentient gas can look smug. "Your turn, Deathworlder," she hummed with harmonic undertones of challenge. I should note here that no one had actually told Lily this was technically a competition. The growing rivalry between her and Zendra had developed entirely organically, which, according to my research, is very on brand for human social interactions. Lily entered the chamber. The first few seconds were unremarkable. Then she did something that caused 3 separate safety protocols to activate simultaneously. She ran. Not the carefully measured pace we expected, but a full speed, ground-pounding sprint that had our sensor arrays sending out distress signals in 17 different languages. "She is accelerating," Coach Steelclaw announced unnecessarily, as we could all see the numbers climbing on the display screen. But where is her propulsion system?" "Those are legs," Coach I explained, though I was equally astounded. "They are using purely mechanical motion. Biological locomotion powered by what did the briefing call it? Right, ATP and lactic acid fermentation." The endurance test almost caused a school-wide shutdown. We had to recalibrate the testing parameters 3 times. By the end, Lily had not only outlasted every other student but was asking if she could continue because, and I quote, "I am finally feeling warmed up." When the final scores were tallied, there was a moment of complete silence in the gymnasium. Even the usually chatty quantum particles in the physics lab next door seemed to pause. "Well done, everyone," I announced, trying to sound professionally calm while my scales were practically vibrating with excitement. "Class dismissed. Lily, a moment please." As the other students filed out, I noticed something remarkable. Yes, there was fear in some of their expressions, but there was also something else: curiosity, admiration, and in Zendra's swirling form, an unmistakable crackle of competitive spirit. Lily approached my desk, still bouncing slightly on her toes. A movement that, given what we had just witnessed, seemed far more threatening than it had any right to be. "Is everything okay, Professor?" she asked. I tried to keep everything within standard parameters. I looked down at my datapad, which was still smoking slightly from trying to process her test results. Standard parameters, it turned out, were going to need some serious recalibration. "Everything is fine," I assured her. "Though I do have one question. You were holding back, were not you?" Her smile was both friendly and somehow terrifying. "Well, yeah. I mean, Earth's gravity is about 3 times stronger than here, and I did not want to show off. Plus, Mom said something about not breaking any schools on my first week." End recording segment 3. Personal note: update the insurance policy. Again, recording date standard Galactic year 2547, day 145. Resume log, Professor Andak's Brightscale recording. The annual inter-house sports tournament arrived with all its usual fanfare, plus an additional layer of tension thicker than a magnetarian's gravitational field. News of our human students' abilities had spread through the academy faster than a quantum entanglement cascade. The traditional team selection ceremony was held in the main gymnasium, which had finally been repaired after Lily's initial assessment. The scorch marks from the speed trial had been particularly challenging to remove. As head of physical education, I presided over the ceremony alongside Coach Steelclaw, whose metallic exoskeleton had been polished to a mirror shine for the occasion. The 4 house captains stood before us: a Luminite, a Nebulonian, a Mindweaver, and a Solarian. When Lily entered the gymnasium, I noticed several students subtly drift away, creating a perfect spherical void around her. All except Kip Brightflare, who, true to his name and nature, bounded over to float beside her, his plasma core pulsing with friendly warmth. The first sign of trouble came during team selections. Zendra Pulseweave, representing the Nebulonian house, spoke up first. "We moved to classify the human as a Class 12 competitor," she announced, her gaseous form crackling with static. "According to Regulation 7.3, subsection B, this would make her ineligible for standard team events." A wave of murmurs rippled through the assembled students. Several Luminites began stress refracting, creating small rainbows across the floor. "May I speak?" Lily asked, raising her hand in that oddly rigid way humans do. When I nodded, she continued, "I have reviewed the regulations. There is a precedent for Class 12 species participation under Section 15, the Adaptive Competition Clause." The room fell silent. Even I had forgotten about that particular regulation, which had been added after the infamous gravity whale incident of 2489. "Do not ask about the details. We are still paying off the insurance claims." Lily continued, her voice carrying that peculiar human quality of both firmness and friendliness. "The clause states that any competitor can participate if they can demonstrate appropriate control and adaptation to standard competition parameters. I noticed Coach Steelclaw frantically checking his datapad, mandibles clicking in surprise when he found she was absolutely correct. The selection proceeded, though with obvious reluctance from most team captains. Eventually, Kip Brightflare, representing the Solarian House, enthusiastically selected Lily for his team. His plasma core practically sparkled with excitement. The obstacle course challenge was the day's main event. Our maintenance crew had outdone themselves, creating a masterpiece of anti-gravity zones, plasma barriers, quantum tunnels, and psychic puzzles. The course wound through the Academy's entire athletic complex, ending in the central arena. Each team would run the course as a relay, with members tackling sections best suited to their species' abilities. The Nebulonians excelled at the gas diffusion chambers, while the Luminites could easily navigate the crystal refraction maze. Things were going smoothly until the third leg of the relay. Lily's section involved crossing a series of floating platforms while carrying a quantum-stabilized energy core. Simple enough, we thought. How wrong we were. The problems began when someone, and I have my suspicions about certain gaseous competitors, adjusted the gravity settings in that section. The platforms began oscillating at random intervals, making the crossing nearly impossible. I reached for the emergency shutdown control, but before I could activate it, something extraordinary happened. Lily, noticing the platform frequencies, did not stop. Instead, she started bouncing. Yes, bouncing. Using the variable gravity to her advantage, she turned the entire section into what she later called a parkour run. The sight of a human purposefully launching herself through three-dimensional space caused several mindweavers to develop spontaneous psychic hiccups. But the real crisis came at the halfway point. The unstable gravity fields had affected the quantum-stabilized energy core. It began to pulse with dangerous levels of radiation. Normally, this would trigger an automatic safety shutdown. Unfortunately, the safety systems had been disrupted by the gravity fluctuations. We had seconds before a catastrophic containment failure. What happened next became the most watched video in Academy history, even surpassing the famous cafeteria AI love story incident. Lily, assessing the situation with remarkable speed, did not retreat. Instead, she accelerated. Using the unstable platforms as springboards, she began moving faster, each jump precisely calculated. The energy core's warning pulse was now a constant shriek. Professor Coach Steelclaw shouted, "The human is heading for the cryogenic emergency chamber." Of course. The chamber, designed for containing plasma breaches, could safely absorb the energy core's radiation. But reaching it meant crossing a section of complete vacuum, something no standard competitor could survive. Lily did not hesitate. She took one final leap, tucked the energy core close to her body, and held her breath. Do you know how long a human can survive in vacuum? Neither did we. Our xenobiology department is still arguing about it. But Lily crossed that gap, reached the chamber, and deposited the core with 2.3 seconds to spare. When she emerged covered in frost but grinning, the silence in the arena was absolute. Then Kip Brightflare began to pulse with light, a slow build that grew into a radiant display of appreciation. One by one, other students joined in. The Luminites created a crystal resonance pattern of respect. The Nebulonians swirled in harmonious formations. Even Zendra Pulseweave crackled with reluctant admiration. The competition was officially suspended for safety reviews, but something more important had happened. The students had witnessed not just human physical capabilities, but human problem-solving, courage, and quick thinking. Later, during the mandatory medical check, I overheard Lily talking to Zendra. You know, Lily said, while being scanned for radiation exposure on Earth, we have this thing called parkour. I could teach you some techniques that would work amazingly well with your gaseous form. Zendra's competitive crackle softened to a curious hum. Perhaps we could exchange training methods. Your gravitational control was not entirely terrible. End recording segment 4. Personal note: submit requisition for expanded safety protocols, additional emergency equipment, and one specialized human first aid kit. Also, schedule a meeting with the insurance adjusters. Again. Recording date: Standard Galactic Year 2547, Day 160. Resume OG, Professor Andak's Brightscale recording. Following the now infamous obstacle course incident, something remarkable began happening at the academy. It started small, like most revolutionary changes do, with a simple question from Kip Brightflare during our morning exercise session. "Professor," he asked, his plasma core pulsing with curiosity, "why does Lily keep requesting higher gravity settings in her personal training chamber?" The question attracted the attention of several other students, including Zendra Pulseweave, who had been pretending not to listen while practicing her molecular density exercises nearby. Well, I began, realizing this was a perfect teaching opportunity. Perhaps we should ask her directly. Lily, who had been casually doing what she called push-ups under triple standard gravity, looked up. "Oh, this is still only about 60% of Earth gravity. I am trying to maintain my muscle mass." The entire class stopped their exercises. Even the quantum particles in the physics lab next door seemed to pause their eternal dance of uncertainty. "You mean," Zendra drifted closer, her gaseous form condensing with concentration, "your species evolved under even higher gravitational conditions than this?" Lily sat up, wiping what she had explained was not a malfunction but a natural cooling process called sweat from her forehead. Earth is pretty intense compared to standard galactic conditions. Higher gravity, variable temperatures, atmospheric pressure changes, seasonal shifts, you name it. What followed was the most engaging xenobiology lesson I have ever witnessed, though our actual xenobiology professor might disagree, given that she was still conducting all her lectures via hologram from 3 systems away. Lily pulled up a holographic display of Earth, and the students gathered around, their previous apprehension forgotten in the face of scientific curiosity. She showed them mountains higher than some planetary atmospheres, oceans deep enough to crush most spacecraft, and weather patterns that would qualify as natural disasters on most civilized worlds. "You mean," one of the Luminites chimed in, their crystalline form vibrating with disbelief, "you drink dihydrogen monoxide not because you are brave, but because you need it to survive." "And these temperature variations," Kip added, his corona flaring with excitement, "you experience them daily, without entering a dormant state." Lily nodded, then demonstrated something she called goosebumps, which caused several students to send out distress signals before realizing it was a natural response. "The really interesting stuff," she continued, "is how we adapted. Humans do not just survive in our environment, we actively seek out challenges. We climb mountains because they are there, swim in freezing water for fun, and invented something called extreme sports because regular sports were not exciting enough." "But why?" Zendra asked, her competitive crackle softening to a curious hum. "Because we can," Lily replied with that peculiar human expression called a shrug. "Our greatest strength is not our muscles or endurance. It is our adaptability." To demonstrate, she invited students to join her in modified versions of human exercises. The Nebulonians discovered they could create incredibly efficient resistance training by manipulating their own molecular density. The Luminites found that their crystalline forms could channel and amplify kinetic energy in ways they had never considered. Even Zendra, who had been Lily's strongest critic, found herself engaged in what they called a training partnership. The sight of a human and a Nebulonian attempting to perfect something called a high five became a regular occurrence in the gym. The most profound moment came during a discussion about different types of strength. Kip Brightflare, ever enthusiastic, had been trying to match Lily's physical feats until she stopped him. "Look," she said, placing a hand near his plasma core, careful not to disrupt his containment field. "You can literally compress hydrogen into helium. You are basically a walking star. That is your strength, just as Zendra can change her entire molecular structure at will. And the Luminites can bend light itself. We are all strong in different ways." The change in the Academy's atmosphere was remarkable. Students began sharing their species-specific training techniques, creating new hybrid exercises that played to everyone's unique abilities. The gymnasium became a laboratory of interspecies cooperation. One particularly memorable session involved Lily teaching Mindweavers how to use their telekinesis more efficiently by understanding human martial arts principles. The sight of levitating weights moving through complex kata patterns while a human demonstrated proper form is something I will never forget. But perhaps the most significant breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Our cafeteria's quantum AI, inspired by all the interspecies collaboration, began customizing its inspirational messages, instead of generic encouragement. It now offered species-specific motivation based on individual biological and psychological profiles. My personal favorite was when it served Lily a protein-rich meal with the message, "Remember, on your homeworld, this plate would be much heavier. You are doing great." The revelation of human adaptability had transformed from a source of fear into a catalyst for growth. Students began to see their own unique characteristics not as limitations, but as specialized tools in their evolutionary toolkit. Yesterday, I overheard a group of students from different species planning what they called an interspecies Olympics. The event list included everything from plasma surfing to quantum tunneling races, with each activity designed to showcase different types of biological and physical capabilities. Lily had been right. Strength was not just about lifting heavy objects or surviving harsh conditions. It was about understanding and embracing the incredible diversity of life in our galaxy. End recording segment 5. Personal note: update the Academy curriculum to include comparative xenobiology as a mandatory subject. Also approve the Interspecies Olympics proposal, but triple the insurance coverage, just in case. Recording date: Standard Galactic Year 2547, Day 200. Final log entry: Professor Andak's Brightscale recording. As I sit here in the newly reinforced faculty office, reviewing the end-of-term evaluations, I cannot help but reflect on how much has changed since that first nervous faculty meeting about our human student. The final physical assessments concluded yesterday, and I am still processing the results. Not because they were catastrophic, as we initially feared, but because they were revolutionary. When Lily Blackwood arrived, we thought we needed to protect our facility from her. What we did not realize was that she would end up transforming it entirely. The assessment arena today barely resembles its original form. Students now train in variable gravity zones, each species pushing their unique abilities to new limits. The Luminites have developed a fascinating technique they call prismatic momentum, combining their crystalline properties with human parkour principles. Zendra Pulseweave, once our most vocal skeptic, now leads what she calls cross-species conditioning sessions. This morning, I watched her demonstrate how to combine Nebulonian gas diffusion techniques with human cardiovascular training. The sight of students from 6 different species attempting to jog while phase shifting through obstacle courses would have given our insurance adjusters a collective nervous breakdown. 3 months ago, our new curriculum, approved unanimously by the board, now includes something called comparative species advantage training. The basic principle, as Lily explained it, is elegantly simple: nobody needs to be good at everything, but everyone is good at something. Speaking of Lily, her final evaluation was, well, perhaps I should quote her directly. "Professor," she said, standing in my office with perfect posture, her newly earned achievements displayed on her uniform, "I would like to petition for a modification to my grade." I admit, my scales rippled with concern. Her performance had been exemplary. What could she possibly want to change? "I think," she continued, "you should lower my scores in the strength and endurance categories." My confusion must have been evident, as she quickly explained. "These scores are meant to show improvement, right? But you are scoring me against human baseline standards. That is not fair to everyone else. They have all improved far more dramatically than I have." I looked at my data pad, displaying the final assessment results. She was right, of course, while her raw numbers were impressive. The relative improvement shown by her classmates was truly remarkable. Kip Brightflare had learned to modulate his plasma core temperature with previously unheard of precision. The Luminites had developed entirely new refraction patterns based on human biomechanical principles. "Your request is noted," I told her, and denied. Before she could protest, I continued, "Because you have taught us something far more valuable than physical capabilities. You have shown us that true strength lies not in individual performance, but in how we inspire others to grow." The graduation ceremony tomorrow will be unlike any in the Academy's history. For the first time, we will present the Interspecies Cooperation Award, created in honor of this remarkable term. The trophy, appropriately enough, changes its physical properties based on who is holding it. Our maintenance staff finally stopped filing complaints about the constant need for repairs. Instead, they have started an informal betting pool on which training innovation will require the next structural upgrade. Current odds favor the Mindweaver human combined zero-gravity meditation sessions. The cafeteria AI has become surprisingly insightful in its motivational messages. This morning, it served breakfast with notes customized for each species about the importance of stepping outside one's comfort zone, though I suspect Lily's influence when my meal came with the message. Sometimes the best way to face your fears is to scale them like a mountain. As I conclude this record, I can hear the sounds of students in the gymnasium. The distinct whoosh of Nebulonian movement, the harmonic hum of luminite crystals, the crackle of Solarian energy, and the rhythmic impact of human footsteps. All blending together in what I can only describe as the music of progress. To think we were worried about surviving a death worlder. Instead, she taught us how to truly live. End final recording. Personal note: submit proposal for expanded exchange program with Earth. And yes, upgrade the insurance policy. Again, some habits are hard to break. Postscript: the quantum cafeteria AI just served me my end-of-term review meal with a fortune cookie, another human tradition Lily introduced. The message inside reads: the greatest discoveries often come from what we initially fear the most. I could not have said it better myself.